Hello and welcome to the Friday, March 14th, 2025 edition of the SANS Internet Storm Center's Stormcast. My name is Johannes Ulrich and today I'm recording from Jacksonville, Florida. In today's diary, Guy is talking about how to use Microsoft's business intelligence tool, Microsoft BI, in order to better understand what's happening with binaries uploaded to your honeypot. The honeypot uses a Cowrie. Cowrie, of course, is able to collect any files that an attacker uploads to the honeypot, and we support this as an option in the honeypot. But then, of course, you also want to go over the data and see if you found anything new and interesting. Well, with business intelligence, it's fairly straightforward, and Guy goes over the process to import this file data into business intelligence and then slice and dice it, look for anomalies, look essentially for odd and interesting things using business intelligence. A pretty interesting tool. Personally, not that familiar with it, but Guy has been using it more and more to look at honeypot data and is pretty happy and successful in doing so. And then we got an interesting vulnerability this week that I probably should have covered yesterday, but things were a little bit messy about. Let me describe this a little bit. It's about Apache Camel. Apache Camel is an open source integration framework. It helps you essentially connect different APIs together, and it's quite popular, for example, to orchestrate Kubernetes clusters. That being said, well, there was recently a fairly simple to exploit vulnerability in Apache Camel that required you to set a specific header. Essentially, all you need to do is add a command to the header as a value, and then the command will be executed. Now, you may say, how can something simple, stupid like this happen? Well, the problem was that these headers were only supposed to be used sort of internally, and any external request with a header like this, well, was supposed to be filtered. But the filters were case sensitive. So by being a little bit creative with upper lowercase, it was fairly easy to bypass these filters and execute commands. Now, doing so with filters, the problem, however, was that this fix was not complete. It's also possible to exploit essentially the same vulnerability by just adding this header name and a parameter as a get parameter to your request. And that's, of course, a lot easier to exploit. Headers, odd headers like this particular, are relatively straightforward to filter. Well, once you have simple URL parameters and you're able to exploit this very trivial arbitrary command execution vulnerability, that sort of puts the entire vulnerability at a new level. They were initially sort of a little bit of messed up vulnerability disclosure process where there were posts about this big vulnerability without any details. Well, we do have patches available now. Make sure you apply the latest, greatest patch that will also fix the parameter vulnerability, not just the header vulnerability. So that again applies to Apache Camel, and one place to look for it is your Kubernetes clusters, but it may show up in all kinds of other different pieces of software and such. So it's basically one of those integration frameworks, middleware type softwares that are often sort of an add-on to existing systems. And then we got an out-of-cycle bulletin from Juniper. Juniper fixes with this bulletin an already exploited vulnerability in Junos. The vulnerability doesn't sound that severe at first because in order to exploit, an attacker already has to have a highly privileged account and access to the device. On the other hand, once an attacker is able to exploit this vulnerability, the attacker is essentially able to compromise the integrity of the device, so escape any kind of sandboxing and such that the user is supposed to be confined to. This vulnerability, again, has already been exploited. According to the bulletin, at least one case is known to Juniper. It's often put together with like some of the recent Volt Typhoon attacks and the like, and initially sort of has been a little bit labeled as an attack against out-of-date routers. But then again, this is a current new update for Junos. So make sure that you're not vulnerable. If you're running Junos Evolved, you are not vulnerable to this particular issue. And if you're using any systems with AMI bias, in particular, if they support Redfish, which is sort of an HTML5 remote access interface for your system, well, be aware there is an update for you likely around there, and it fixes a vulnerability with a CVSS score of a perfect 10. This is an authentication bypass vulnerability, so as long as the baseboard management controller, the BMC interface, is exposed to the network, an attacker should be able to completely compromise your system. Well, and that's it for today. So thanks again for listening. Have a great weekend and talk to you again on Monday. Bye.